How do you deal with real event OCD and feeling the need to confess?
Yeah. I have several clients I've worked with who experience.
Oh, well, I'd love to hear about that.
And it's interesting. One person in particular just really felt lost in the mix because when he was first getting started with treatment, he's like, but what I obsess over really occurred.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, it's not an intrusive thought of what if I do something. He's like, but this is something that really occurred. Now, of course, how he interprets that, the story and the narrative around all of that is very different than what another person might experience because of how OCD latched on. But that was very much a part of his experience with the OCD, was that he felt the need to confess to every close person in his life. And so if he would start a new relationship, it was like, I've got to let them know all of these things happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was his journey, was really being able to, of course, step away from reassurance seeking, confessing, and doing scripting around the uncertainty and what if they would find out about it at some point, and not knowing what could come from that, or just what it means to not tell people this information.
I don't know that I know anyone who hasn't done something really shitty or crappy at some point in their life, right?
I have not.
Well, other than you, Dr. Jacobson, other than you, of course.
I'm totally kidding. Yes.
I know.
I'm human too. Yes.
So is the event the problem, or is the OCD interpretation of the event the problem? I think becomes the question, and exactly where you were going with that, that I think that's really what we're talking about here is OCD has never once interpreted anything to go well, right? I mean, no one with OCD has ever walked in my office and said, I'm afraid everyone loves me and thinks I'm great. We've treated nobody for that. I don't know if you have, but I've never seen that one. So the event in and of itself, in many ways, doesn't really matter as much as the way we interpret the event and what OCD latches onto about the event.
Absolutely. And there's, that's often, in my experience, there's maybe a fear element, but it's more so a shame element. So it's when OCD kind of throws this weapon of shame at us and says, you're an awful person for doing this thing, or for thinking this thought, or for experiencing this. And then that interpretation is what keeps it kind of stuck in their mind and in their memories.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because OCD, if we look at the DSM, says anxiety or distress, but I think we have to broaden OCD to shame and guilt and disgust and all sorts of other emotions that are really uncomfortable for people. And it's not just anxiety. And maybe that was one good reason to think about moving it out of the anxiety disorders, because we were kind of pigeonholed into that idea of anxiety. OCD isn't just anxiety, though. There's so much shame and guilt and disgust and other really uncomfortable emotions that people may experience because of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why it gets missed a lot of the time. People are like, I'm not anxious. I have this overwhelming feeling of shame or disgust or whatever else it might be. Or anger.
Yeah.